For this sharecropping simulation, you are going to need a separate piece of paper and something to write with, a pen, a pencil, a marker, a crayon, whatever you have. Once you have that, you're also going to make sure that you have your sharecropping simulation worksheet open. You'll notice in the first column of round 1, we have money borrowed. So oftentimes, sharecroppers had to borrow money to start off buying food, clothing, tools, medicine, and the rent for the land. So if we add up all of this in round 1, we see that we have to borrow $200. So fill out your worksheet that we've borrowed $200. Now you are going to have 30 seconds to get as many tally marks as you can on your separate piece of paper. So I'm going to start the timer. Are you ready? 3, 2, 1, go. Try and get as many tally marks as you possibly can on that piece of paper in the next 30 seconds. And time's up, so stop making your tally marks. Now what I'd like you to do is count the total number of tally marks that you made in that 30 seconds and enter it right here. So for example, if I made 100 tally marks in that 30 seconds, I would put in 100. If I made 120 tally marks, I'd put in 120, let's say. Then you're going to take your total number of tally marks and multiply it by 2, because every tally mark is worth $2. So, if I multiply 120 in my simulation by 2, I get 240. So that's how much money I earned in year 1. Now to find out how much income or debt I have for this year, I'm going to come over to the third column and I'm going to enter that $240 in here. Then I'm going to subtract the money I had to borrow at the beginning, which we calculated at $200. So 240 minus 200 is $40. So at the end of my first year of sharecropping, I earned a profit of $40. Now we're going to move on to round 2. You'll notice that the cost has gone up. Thankfully, the rent for the land is the same, but food, clothing, tools, and medicine has gone up by quite a bit. So now instead of borrowing $200, I now have to borrow $400. So we're going to enter 400 in the money borrowed. And now we're going to do round 2 of tally marks. So you're going to have 30 seconds yet again. Get out your paper and pencil. In 3, 2, 1, start. Oh, and put your hands up. Unfortunately, this year there was a freak snowstorm, so you lost all the rest of your crops. So you only have what you were able to earn in the first half of the year. So count up your tally marks. And in this round, let's say I only got 53 tally marks. So if I multiply that by 2, this year I only earned $106. So I take my money earned over here, $106, minus the $400, and I lost $294. So now I'm in debt $294 because unfortunately the weather cut my growing season short. Now we're going to move on to round 3. And unfortunately, as you can see, the rent for the land has gone up $200. So the landowner decided to raise the rent. I also have to spend a lot more on food. So the total number of money borrowed I had to borrow this year was $500. So we're going to mark $500. And now we're going to, in the next 30 seconds, try and get as many as we possibly can, as many tally marks. Are you ready? In 3, 2, 1, go. And pause for a moment. Unfortunately, I thought this was going to be a good year, but unfortunately, our horse has run away and all of our tools have broken. So you have to do everything this year by hand. So I want you to take your pencil or pen or whatever you're using, and I want you to switch to your other hand. So if you were writing with your right hand before, you're going to switch over to your left hand with for the rest of our 30 seconds. And if you started with your left hand, you're going to switch over to your right. So you can resume starting now. And stop. So that was a little bit of a challenge. So I only made 76 marks with having to switch over to my left hand. So 76 times 2 is 150. Yeah. And if I subtract, so I'm going to put over here 152 minus the 500 that I borrowed, I am in debt this year $348, unfortunately. So now, if you scroll down, you're going to see your total year 1 income and debt. So if you go back up to the top, my total income and debt for year 1, or round 1, was $40. My total year 2 income and debt was negative $294. And for year 3, it's negative $348. So if I do the math, unfortunately, I am in debt $602 in 3 years. How did you do? Did you make a profit, or are you in debt like I am? Now that you've finished your simulation, here are some questions and ideas to consider. Do you think it was easy to support a family with sharecropping? Why or why not? Did you notice any trends? Unfortunately, the longer you're a sharecropper, for the most part, the more debt that you collect. You can't leave your land then, because if you do, you won't be making any money, and you certainly won't be able to pay back your debt. So in conclusion, many poor people and newly freed people became sharecroppers after the Civil War. It was often the only option for poor and newly freed people who didn't have an education or any sort of skills that they could use to get themselves better jobs. It was not a good way of life. With constantly increasing debt, you were unable to escape the cycle, and you were tied to one land.